5.2 it was, you'd like to list?
Yeah, Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, March 14th, 2023.
Okay. Yeah, or just the whole minutes, 5.2.
Which item?
Oh, which item did you want to lift?
It's the GH 23-05, the Municipal Heritage Register porch demolition alteration, 8.3.
All right, that'll so be noted, and we'll discuss that separately. Councillor Corstangi, that's been lifted, and we can talk about that now. Go ahead. Yes, Councillor Charwa.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, can I lift agenda from the consent agenda? Do I do that now or after? Okay, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Councillor Corstangi.
Thank you. This was an item discussed at the Heritage Committee meeting, and it was passed by the Heritage Committee. It is for a porch demolition and alteration to 18 Murray Street. We were hoping to pass this through quickly because there was rot on the porch, and we wanted to make sure that the Heritage homeowners could get to the work as soon as possible, given that it's spring.
All right, so is that meaning you want it to go direct to council? Is that, are we able to do that? Or, yes.
We can.
All right.
Pass that under the resolutions at council.
Okay. All right, so we can put a motion, after approving these minutes, we can put a motion on the floor to
council.
To move it to council.
Thank you.
All right, so they won't. We just need a mover and seconder now for the minutes again, because moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee meeting minutes of February 2nd, 2023 and March 14th, 2023 be received. All in favor? Carried. All right, now we move to our delegation portion. First up, we have Tom Neufeld from the Farmers Market of Grimsby. Good evening, Tom.
So good evening, Mayor Jeff Jordan, Grimsby councillors. It's good to be here this evening on behalf of the Farmers Market in Grimsby. I just wanted to say before I begin here, a big thank you to this town of Grimsby for being supportive of the Farmers Market in Grimsby for many years. I understand that you may have seen a letter about the request here beforehand. I will highlight it, I will not read it. There are some things there I'll just talk about before we move into any kind of questions or dialogue. So, the market's been around in St. Catharines since 2008, and it started at St. George's Church and then moved in 2010 to the main street where we have been, may I say, off and on the last number of years. And this is partially due to, of course, the COVID-19 chaos, which we have all lived with for 3 years. So we worked off of the street for some years, and during COVID, we moved to the Peach King Arena parking lot. We returned this past season for the last number of weeks to the city street, and that was a move which was something that the public was demanding, and it was something that went over well. People were happy to have us back. I want to make a comment about the operation of the Grimsby Market. I have been chair of Farmers Markets Ontario, and I've been involved with that organization in the past for up to 8 years. I chaired it at one time. And the Grimsby market is one of the better models of administration that I have seen of farmers markets in Ontario. All members are volunteers, and it has been that way from the beginning in terms of its operation. The market carries $5 million liability insurance, and the town and the region are both included as the insured there. It's a safe place, and it's well covered for liability. At the March meeting of the DIA, the committee unanimously approved the closure and return of the market in the coming season, and I understand a report will be forthcoming on that. The market has worked with the police, EMS, and bus lines, everyone, to advise them of the road closure prior to it happening every season. Town of Grimsby has provided in-kind services in closing and reopening the road, and there will be a report forthcoming to council with regard to this kind of support at a future date, I understand. So here is the ask this evening. The ask is, we are requesting permission from council to allow the farmers market to apply for a road closure permit, which will see the road closed from 1:00 p.m. until 8:00 p.m. each Thursday from June 1st to October 5th. And we would like to ask for that for 2023 and 2024. Any questions that you would like to ask at this time?
Yeah. Is this the end of your presentation, or is it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, we didn't know. So thank you very much for your presentation, Tom, and Councillor Frake, you're first on the list.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Hi, Tom.
Hello there.
How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Love the farmers market. I think it's great it's coming back downtown. I had a couple of questions. Can you tell me about, you said there's a board, it's a non-profit organization now, and there's a board?
Yes, there's a steering committee is the word we use, that there's an executive and a steering committee, and it works to check the attendance of vendors that come to the market. We want to make sure that it's a farmer's market primarily.
Right.
And any other ups and downs or questions or operation issues that may come of it.
I-90 east toward Buffalo.
We have a ghost speaking here somewhere.
Sorry. What's going on? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Continue.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that's how the operation of it has been from its onset, and it continues to be that way. It is a voluntary steering committee which makes the decisions of its function.
And what's the board made up of? Is it, I think it's residents and merchants?
Yes, I believe there's the steering committee has a representative from the DIA, I believe, and I think one community member as well, I believe.
And the others are farmer market vendors, or?
Correct.
Are you allowed to say who they are, or was that?
I'm not sure who they all are this year, to be honest with you. I think they are all farm operators. There may be one food vendor in the group. Jim Warner, I think, is one of them. Myself. I can't remember from last fall who was all placed on there, but it is largely a farmer-based.
Okay, and is it the same makeup as last year as well?
Yeah, we go on for 3-year terms, so I think we're all in the second year of our 3-year terms at this point.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, I don't know who can answer this. Is there a fee, is it fee-based, or do you have to pay a fee to be a part of the market, or?
There are dues that market vendors pay in order to have a stall space, and the stalls are rented out individually. Some of us have 2, some of us have 3, depending on the size of our farm operation.
Okay.
So yes.
There was one complaint, I think, the last time we had a farmer's market from one of the merchants downtown. It's right on the corner of Christie and Main. I think it's the gentleman that has the karate studio, or I think it's karate studio, judo studio there.
I recall this dispute. It was some years ago that we had that. I'm not sure that's an active issue at this point.
Because I think he was having an issue with trying to access, or his patrons accessing his building when the farmer's market was on. Is there something we can do? I'm not sure who I should ask, or whether you should make sure that that merchant has access to his property at all times?
Yeah, my understanding is that has been settled. And like I say, that is some time ago. I believe that was a pre-COVID issue. So I'm not aware of that being an active problem at this point, but it's certainly something we would deal with responsibly should that be the case. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Councillor DeVoldy?
Hang on.
Thank you. That explains the flashing green light on my console. Good evening. I was really happy to read your report and see that you have turned the organization into a not-for-profit. I'm assuming an incorporated not-for-profit entity is what you meant?
That is my understanding.
That it is an incorporated entity, yes, okay. And you made mention in your presentation that there's a report coming to us as council on the actual closing of the street, opening and so on. Could you just expand upon that?
Yeah, I'm not completely clear on that piece of the puzzle because it's not directly from us as the farm community, but I do understand that there is more information coming regarding those kind of pieces of the puzzle. I also think there is a financial report that is coming forthwith as well, which is not finalized at this point. I can give you some rough ideas about some numbers that I have here if you want to hear them.
Absolutely,
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, let me see here. We had an income from market vendors last year of about $12,000 in 2022. Insurance and membership dues were $1,800, bookkeeping services $2,000, office supplies and expenses, meeting expenses $2,000, market buck program, and I'll elaborate on that, was $1,500, and advertising runs about $2,000. The balance is for hydro and miscellaneous expenses. So we have a hydro service there for some vendors, and that costs us something, certainly. The Market Bucks program is a program that has been in place for a number of years, which is intended to help people decide to shop at the market. It's kind of aimed at lower-income families, but many people use it. And it's been a very successful program in terms of, engaging people to be more involved in buying local food, which I think is a splendid exercise for the market to be part of. So that's a creative thing that's been happening at Grimsby that doesn't happen at all markets, which I think is a really feather in their cap.
Thank you. So when we talk about this report coming, and I don't know, perhaps our town manager can add something to that. Are we talking about a report coming to council that deals with the costs of opening and closing the road, like our commitment in terms of our staffing costs to this? Is that the report that's coming to us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So Sarah Sweeney can elaborate on that, but we can include all that those information in that report. So we can take that away, but I think Sarah's online and she can tell you a bit more details on the closure of the roads report.
Or if a report is coming, we can wait. Oh, we see her online, for sure. If Sarah, if you can add
Go
something
ahead,
to that.
Thank you, through Mayor. I'll keep it brief. Yes, we will. A report comes through staff that outlines the road closure request, and we'll include in that what the staff contribution is towards that road closure. So we'll have all that information for you as part of that report.
If I may just ask one more question, Mayor Jordan. So I do want to say that, as a representative of council on the DIA, we certainly endorsed the farmers market at our last meeting and would like to see it come back by all means. And yes, of course, I am always interested in the actual cost to us of delivering these services too. And I appreciate the fact that you shared your financial information. And so might I ask if you would be able to share that report in writing with us as to where your finances are? And I'll tell you why. It's the accountant in me that says, when we're asked to provide something, I'll say for free, like, opening and closing a road and things like that, happy to do so. But obviously, if we had an organization that was sitting with hundreds of thousands of dollars in it, and I that's probably not you, but if it were, you can imagine how the ask would be taken in a different way, right? And so it would be immensely helpful if you could share your finances with us, and even if you could share them with Sarah, and if she could make it just an appendix to her report or something like that, that would be wonderful, and I'd really appreciate that.
It is our intention to provide that for you. That is coming forthwith, so
Excellent.
you can
Thank
count on that happening.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Councillor Vardy, then Councillor Howe.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite supportive of the farmers market coming to downtown. My only concern, and perhaps Brandon could address this, the Director of Operations, I'm just a little worried of making a commitment multi-year, knowing that we're going to have construction in the future and how that might impact our commitment to you. So maybe Brandon could speak to that.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think if I was hearing the delegate correctly, the commitment is for 2023 and 2024. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So as it stands right now, our plans for construction are in the 2025-2026 season. So I don't see that conflicting as things stand right now. But certainly it probably involves some more discussions. Just make sure that I fully understand what that commitment is, and we can provide a response back.
If I may, Brandon, what about Century Condos? Do you know the timing of their construction? Because that might impact road closure.
Yeah, I think that is involved. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Involved with that construction, we are asking them to consider how they accommodate the closures that would be required as part of the market. So essentially, they'd be operating on the fact that those closures would occur on Thursdays.
If I could just add If I could just add something here.
Go ahead, Tom.
We have been nimble in the past about responding to changes. You may recall a number of years ago there was a fire downtown, and at that point we shuffled off with very short notice to a different location again over by the Peach King Arena. So should some unforeseen developments happen where construction, for instance, on Main Street were to happen sooner than we're asking, we will work with you on this. That is not a problem.
Thank you. Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. I just have a few questions. First one is, what can you give me an idea of the price for a vendor for, say, somebody that's selling pizza at the farmer's market? I did look up some of the farmer's market information online for Ontario, and it looks, I counted out the weeks, so it looks like it would be a 19-week season, correct?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, so how much would somebody pay for a stall for 19 weeks?
You know, I don't recall what it was for me last year per stall. $340 rings a bell, but I'm not 100% sure if that's correct. It is a reasonable cost. I think it is a fair cost per stand. I pay quite a bit more for City of St. Catharines, for instance, and even more in Niagara and Lake. So as I have said earlier, it's well administered here. The idea is you want to attract farmers, and the idea of bringing farmers to a farmer's market means we have a much less large pool of them these days. Smaller farmers are the ones who usually come to farmers markets, and much of fruit production has shifted to some very large operators in Niagara, and they aren't there. They're shipping to the chain stores, etc. So it's sometimes difficult to attract farmers to a farmer's market. And so I think the administration here has been conscious of that. And so the cost of a vendor stall reflects the sensibility of bringing people here whom we want, who are actual farmers.
Okay. So my next question is pertaining to the vendors, the selection. So I saw that there were 30 vendors. How many of those vendors are from, I know Grimsby, you can't get everybody from Grimsby, but even West Niagara, how many would you say come from Lincoln, Grimsby, South Lincoln?
That's a good question. I would say it's a good cross-section from the area. My farm is in Vineland.
Okay.
Some of them are from Grimsby, Beamsville area, but I would say that they're from a variety of districts close by. Most of them are close by. I don't think we have any that are very far out from Grimsby. I'm not aware of any Niagara on the Lake, for instance, vendors. We have had some as far away as Font Hill, but it is local farmers who are here. And that's one of the strengths of this market as well, in terms of its administration. It's responsible in trying to maintain, I think it's 51% market to be, our farm vendors to be a farmer's market, and we have that here.
Okay. Thank you for those questions. Another one is, so one of my concerns is that, and first of all, I do support this farmer's market. I think it's great, especially in that downtown. My concern, though, is that if there are any vendors that are competing with the downtown businesses. So I don't see that being an issue so much when there's food, but if there are, if somebody is selling clothing or something that somebody could possibly buy at the Nook or, one of those stores, I'm hoping that would be kept in, when you're selecting who is the right fit for this market. That's a consideration. And lastly, I don't love approving things for 2 years because we go kind of 1 year by year. And this finishes at the end of September. So would it be, right, the market wraps up?
October
Okay,
5th,
October,
yeah.
sorry, yes, very end of September, October. So would it be a real issue if we were doing this year by year?
Not at all. I'm just looking to streamline some things in terms of process. I mean, if I were to come back next year and do this again, I can.
Yeah.
I don't mind. It's
Good, we'd like to see you.
It's good to see who we're working with.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think if it's possible to assemble a decision for 2 years when there's possibility for it, I think that's a good idea. To your question about overlap with merchants, I'm not aware of any problematic issues we have with that. It's primarily with food vendors where that would occur. And we're sensitive with setting that up about what is being sold on the market and what is, out there from the restaurant trade that is around the market. I think generally speaking, people are happy that we're bringing more numbers in and that there's possibility for all of us to gain from this, if you will. So I'm not aware of that having been a serious concern. And part of the reason that's the case is we are careful about what we're putting out there. So
Perfect. Great, thank you.
Councillor Bradzi, then Councillor Corstangi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So my only kind of question was, should there be any unforeseen circumstance, could Grimsby on the Lake be seen as the backup destination rather than the Peach King Center? There's a lot of businesses there that would love to have you down there as well, and they have no problem approving it for 2 years.
A curious question. I don't think we have considered that before. I can see where it sounds like a logical possibility, and perhaps it is. As I mentioned earlier, we have been nimble in the past to move when necessary, and we have this default spot at the arena, which people are aware of now. And so I think it would be likely we would return to that because of its familiarity. But something we'll talk about. I appreciate the comment.
Councillor Corstangi.
Through you, Chair. So I just want to touch on the Market Bucks program. So if a resident or a business wanted to purchase Market Bucks, then so that you could give them to GBF and to lower income families so they can shop, are they able to do that?
My understanding is that that's how it's been administered in the past, and I think we would welcome greater interest in this. I think it's a useful tool in terms of bringing people to the market. As I said earlier, to purchase local food, I think, is a really important project that communities should engage with. Bioregionalism, I think it's what we need to do a lot more of. So I think any expansion, if you will, of that idea, we would welcome a dialogue around that, yes.
Thank you. I'd like to see that advertised just because of the rising cost of food and
Certainly.
More families are going to be struggling. I'd love to see as a community, the people that want to donate to that know that it's there and able to, but then also to provide for the community. So I think that's a great part of the market.
Good comments. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for your presentation, Tom, and we look forward to seeing you on June 1st.
Very good. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
We have a move by Councillor DeVoldy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the delegation from Tom Neufeld be received. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for the written delegation from Pride Niagara. Moved by Councillor Charwa, second by Councillor Corstangi. Moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor Korsanji. Resolved that the written delegation from Pride Niagara be received and that the flag raising request be approved for Monday, May 29th, 2023. That's the beginning of Pride Week for 2023. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to our consent agenda. Need a mover and seconder. Councillor Sharwa.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I wanted to lift 7E, FIN 2317, Development Charge Reserve Fund Statement.
All right, anything else to be lifted? Just need a mover and seconder for the remainder. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korsanji. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole hereby approves the following items and that the various consent items be approved on the recommendation as contained therein. FIN 23-11, 2022 Annual Building Permit Fee Report. FIN 23-13, 2022 Statement of Remuneration and Expenses for Members of Council and Council Appointments to Boards. FIN 23-14, Financial Disclosure under Ontario Regulation 284/09. And DCS 2306, Municipal Food Waste Diversion Program Report. All in favor? And that's carried. All right, so that one's... All right, we'll deal with the lifted item first, FIN 2317, 2022 Development Charge Reserve Fund Statement. Councillor Sharwa?
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. So mine, it's just a question, could be a technicality, but I noticed on both Appendix A and Appendix B, under fire, it says Fire Master Plan and Financial Review. It's the financial review that I'm questioning because it's supposed to be a financial audit, and it's mentioned that on both parts. So with the fire pilot, the understanding is that it's a mandatory provision that that both the fire master plan and a financial audit are happening, and it's with the independent third party. And obviously, there's a big difference between a financial review and a financial audit. So in the financial audit, it's supposed to, number 9 of the pilot says that with the financial audit, it's the independent third party. And then with the difference between the finance review and audit, it says a financial review is often used as a first step to evaluate the accuracy and clarity of financial information presented. It may involve limited testing of specific information, but does not include significant auditing. On the other hand, an audit is an independent assessment of the accuracy and completeness of financial records. So I'm not going to read the whole thing about in the pilot, but there's a big difference between a financial review happening and a financial audit. So, and the financial audit is very, there's a lot of detail into the pilot. So I'm hoping I can get some clarification that it's actually going to be the pilot financial audit that is going to be happening as mentioned in the pilot.
Beth?
Good evening, through you, Mr. Mayor. I might have to take that away, but my gut is that the fire master plan and the financial review is intended to cover the audit work. And I know we've had discussions around what that's going to look like when the POMAX comes back with their fire master plan, and in tandem with that, we know that we need to undergo some kind of financial review and analysis. And I do know, I agree, like the agreement does speak to the requirement to have a financial audit. I think we do need to have discussions further around the value of an audit at this point in time, given that we're considering, we've gone far enough now that we're going to take the time to consider whether hear the consultant out, what the findings are, what the recommendations are, understand what those recommendations are, what the financial implications are associated with those recommendations. Auditing the agreement at this point in time, I'm not sure would be fruitful or yield a decision point as to, we could respectfully undergo the audit. But I think the way that the audit was laid out in the agreement is around whether the agreement was complied with. I mean, if that is something that council still wishes to proceed with, I think that's worth discussion. But my understanding is where we're at in the process. There would really be we're approaching a decision point on whether we continue with the pilot and make it more permanent, or we revert back to what we were doing before the pilot. And I think understanding the financial implications of that is far more valuable than undergoing an audit of the agreement at this point in time. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense, thank you. I would hope, though, that we would actually go ahead with the financial audit because it gives us more information. It's also independent, and it also, it makes judgments as far as how we're going to equalize this partnership. So if we're going to continue with it, I just want to make sure that we're doing things the way that we've said we were going to do things. And if things are equitable, then I'm okay with it. But just changing the guidelines right away just doesn't sit well. So I don't know if that's something that the Joint Advisory Committee can possibly take back or what. But I don't know. Oh.
Councillor DeVoley?
Yes, Mayor Jordan, I would certainly be willing to speak a bit to this as a member of the Joint Fire Services Committee, and we did have our first meeting just last week. And that was one of the questions that I did ask our management team of, because the agreement does use the word audit. And as you know, as a CPA with the license to perform audits, of course, that means everything to me and speaks to, my background. And when I got into the terminology and when we were talking about it, I would say that it was probably the agreement of everybody at, both management and from the committee members that no one was actually envisioning a financial audit being done by a CPA firm of the numbers. And the fire chief even said that in retrospect, that was really the wrong word that was used in the agreement to describe what is envisioned. That what we're envisioning is that a third party would be hired, that they would look certainly at the costs and the revenues and the operations and so on, that they would look at all the nuances of it, and that is still to be worked out exactly what that is, and then come back with a report on, the costs, benefits, advantages, disadvantages, and so on of going forward here. We know that both entities, both the town of Grimsby and the town of Lincoln, are independently audited by third parties, and therefore we know that as part of that, both of our fire departments, and including all the costs and revenues associated with it, are subjected to the audit tests of this third party. And so truly, I would say that the Fire Services Committee was unanimous in our thinking that we would not actually be having an independent audit of the expenses and revenues of each of the entities related to fire, and that the terminology was not correct that was used in the agreement, but that instead a third party would be hired to assist in the evaluation of what had taken place and to help us make a decision about where to go going forward.
I just wanted to add, I think it is important to note that it's still a third party that will be conducting the review. So we would assume that they would be neutral and provide, the analysis that both sides are seeking. Sometimes, just to add to what Councillor DeVoli was saying about an audit, it sounds good. It's not going to give you, I think, what you're looking for, actually. And it would be a lot of money to have someone come in and do that. And I also talked to the treasurer at the town of Lincoln, and that word audit, I don't think was the intended use of the term in the agreement, so.
CAO, Tara?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify a bit further, the consultants have notified us that they are going to be conducting interviews with the CAOs, CLT of both towns, and the new council members. So there will be an opportunity to ask them questions.
Any further questions? Councillor Frey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Being that the subject is on the floor, can you give the council some idea what cost of an audit is? I mean, because I think we need to know. I know, but I think the rest of council needs to know what the cost of an audit incurs. And thank you, Beth.
Through the mayor, the way that I understood the agreement was that it was an audit of the agreement, that both parties were adhering to the agreement and the cost distribution, and both were incurring an equitable amount of cost in alignment with the agreement. My experience, to have someone come in and audit just that piece, if that was the scope of it, it's going to be at least $5,000 just for someone to come in and do that.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. So who gets to choose who is doing this financial review then? Because I'd feel most comfortable if you actually had a say in who was doing this, as far as with Lincoln as well, but I would hope that you would have some input.
Yes, I certainly would hope so.
That's good by me, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? No? Moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor DeVoli. Resolved that report FAN 23-17, 2022 Development Charge Reserve Fund Statements dated March 20th, 2023 be received for information, and the Treasurer's Annual Statement of Developmental Charges Reserve Funds for 2022 be made publicly available on the town's website and upon request. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to FIN 23-15, 2022 year-end results and transfers. Questions or comments from council? Oh, Beth, are you coming up, or? I have a presentation. All right, well, I'd like to hear your presentation. It would have been easier if you didn't leave the podium.
Good evening. I feel like I've been in front of you guys a lot over the last few months. But this is exciting tonight. I'm thrilled to be here tonight to present our 2022 year-end financial results. This is a few weeks ahead of where we were last year, so I'm feeling proud of the team to bring these results to you ahead of the budget, which is great because we were able to utilize the information from our year-end results and weave it into the budget. That's one pro of the budget being a little bit later this year. That doesn't normally happen, but I think we were able to capture some savings and develop a good budget as a result. Okay, so my goal of the presentation this evening is to supplement the detailed report in front of you and to provide some key highlights to guide your understanding and decision-making. I will set some context and review the operating levy, water and sewer surpluses and deficits, and outline the recommended strategy for reserve transfers. Next slide. So the financial results in this report are fully transparent in that staff have not recorded any unbudgeted reserve transfers when compiling this report. We are showing you the full results of the operations as compared to our approved budget and subsequently recommending year-end transfers. So there's 5 main themes that contribute to our $984,000 operating levy surplus. and they are consistent with what we've reported in the previous quarters. We're estimating a $719,000 surplus in investment income, surplus in our wages and benefits. We have our one-time dividend from NPI, and we are seeing the deficit in the legal fees, which I've mentioned previously, of about $445,000. And rounding out is $255,000 in other overall net levy savings. Next slide. So we did experience a surplus in water this year, and it was about $400,000, which is about 5% of our operating budget. And it's mainly attributed to a surplus in water revenue, some savings in our water that we purchased, and savings in our wages due to salary gapping, so vacant positions through the year. So you may recall from our 2022 budget that the water rates were not increased in 2021 or in 2022. We are seeing our current rates need to be increased, as noted in our presentation on March 6th, which is mainly due to the increasing region's water rates. We did experience a wastewater deficit this year, approximately 9% of the operating budget, and this is associated with higher than budgeted regional sewer charges of approximately $700,000. In previous years, the other municipalities had incurred more of the cost, which resulted us in having less of the cost. So unfortunately, this year, it does ebb and flow, and that's the purpose of our stabilization reserves. And so you will see that as a recommendation to fund that deficit through our stabilization reserves. Next slide. So the approach in front of you tonight is aligned with our approved reserve strategy and policy to build financial sustainability into the town's operations. Year-end surplus allocated in the following order of priority. So typically our recommendations would ensure we're at 10 to 15% of gross operating expenditures in our stabilization reserves. And this helps to build a foundation to ensure Grimsby can deal with unforeseen or unplanned events in the future. After addressing the contingency needs, we are ensuring we are properly funding the many projects embedded in our 2023 budget. And the details of the year-end transfer is found on Appendix C. There's a column that shows the surplus and what reserves we're recommending this surplus be transferred to. Just to note, we did have a pre-approval of 2023 capital of $361,000, so we're going to be satisfying that request first. And then we're going to be funding Council Strategic Priority Reserve Project. And this aligns with past practice, given that this is the first term of new council. And to fund areas that have been identified as being underfunded in the past, so our election reserve as a result of the election costing more in 2022 as a result of having more polling stations. We will be topping up that reserve by $50,000. And anything that's a special purpose reserve, the library and the building department are examples. If they have surpluses, unspent reserves, the building had a levy surplus in the building department, we're transferring that surplus to the building reserve. Library has a surplus, we're giving that back to the library. And that's in alignment with our policy. Next slide. So in 2022, we did start, was the first year of tracking operating projects, which are intended to capture one-time initiatives that might span over a year, but do not result in a capital asset. So they're operating in nature. While in 2022, a few projects are carried forward, there continues to be real need for these initiatives, and staff expect this to be a real focus of 2023. Many of these are legislative and strategic in nature. So of the 35 projects, 12 were completed, 17 are carried forward, and 6 were canceled and or rebudgeted in 2023. Next slide. And again, with our capital budget, we had 46 projects completed, 35 carried forward, 6 canceled, and of those 6, 4 were rebudgeted in 2023. And 2 of the canceled projects were because they were no longer required. So Carnegie roof replacement was changed to a repair in year. And then the tree planting project with MPCA project was done with no cost to the town. MPCA received grant funding, so that was good news. So being canceled is a good thing. Okay, as far as next steps, council approval of the reserve transfers as presented in the report in Appendix C. And then our next steps is to complete the auditors will be on site shortly, and we do hope to bring the audited financial statements. I'm guessing they will go to the Finance Standing Committee sometime in June, and also we have to undergo our provincial reporting requirements. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Beth. Questions or from council? Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Beth, in one of your slides or in your presentation here, this is very hard to see. There's 35 projects that have been forwarded to 2023. Is that correct? If I got, you want to go back to that slide? I think that's what I saw. I guess my question is basically, by pushing those projects into 2023, well, it's also going to cost us, because they weren't completed in 2022, it's going to cost us a lot more in 2023 because of inflation and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. I guess that's a yes. By not completing them in 2022, we're going to pay the penalty in 2023.
Through the mayor, quite a few of those projects have already had procurement commitments, meaning that we've gone out to market and we've tendered the work. We just haven't paid for it yet. So we have to keep the project open and carried it forward. We've seen recent tenders actually coming in and prices are coming down. So I want to knock on wood.
That's good to hear. But can those vendors come back to us and ask us for the inflationary rate of increase?
Through the mayor, I mean, they could. It would be breaking their contract with us, so that would come with ramifications. And we haven't experienced that, no.
I know a lot of these contracts, when they're written, they build in a clause that covers inflation, so I'm just wondering if that's the case with any or all of those particular projects.
Through the mayor, nothing that I don't think because the capital projects are relatively done, they're completed over a year or two, so there isn't that, hopefully they're probably building in an inflationary pressure when they bid on the work. So I'm sure they are ensuring that they are adequately compensated for the work. Where we are seeing, and where you are right, is some of our longstanding contracts, specifically, I want to say in our software agreements, we have existing software that we utilize, and it's under contractual agreement. We've been with them, certain vendors for 5+ years. We're seeing that those costs are incrementally increasing to accommodate their increased costs of staffing. And those are the situations that we really are limited as to what we can do, because we've already invested in the software, we're using it, and, going back out to market and reinvesting in a new software isn't also financially or a good use of our time. So we weigh those considerations out. I will say internally we have great staff that push back and question and try and get better pricing. I've seen that firsthand. So we do try, but sometimes you're right. We have had some experiences where we're between 5% and 10% increases on some of our contracts.
Thanks. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments from council, we need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that report FIN 2315, 2022 year-end results and transfers dated March 20th, 2023 be received, and that the 2022 surplus listed below be transferred to surplus or deficit listed below be transferred to or from reserves as outlined in Appendix C. 983.94 in operational levy, negative 547,446 in wastewater, 408,072 in water, 2925 in downtown improvement area. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we have the Grimsby on the Lake BIA resolution. I have it moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Baradzi. Discussion, Councillor Baradzi?
Yeah, through the chair. Throughout the campaign, I was kind of in and out of a lot of these businesses while door knocking in the area. And as you heard from the delegation, a lot of them have felt left out by the town. And just as the area continues to be built up, we'd like to see more things like the farmers market, for lack of a better thing. Events on the water. We do lack any hydro outlets or a public bathroom down there, but we would definitely like to see the town do more to foster a community down there.
Any, Councillor Sharwa?
Thank you through Mayor Jordan. I'm supportive of this. I know when we were talking about strategic priorities, I know myself, I was interested in trying to link the newer Grimsby on the Lake with established Grimsby and try to bridge that. And I think this is a nice way to kind of get people in that area from here as well and back and forth. So I'm supportive.
Councillor DeVoli?
I too was happy to see the merchants from, as we call it, Grimsby on the Lake, come forward and declare their initiative in trying to start a DIA for that area. I think it's important, though, to understand that the DIA that is downtown, and all DIAs actually, do not receive any funding from the town itself. And I truly hope that the merchants by the lake understand that there is a separate levy that will come on their tax bill, either to themselves if they are the owner of the property, or to the, indirectly through their lease agreements. And so by setting this up, there is a cost to them, not only in dollars, in property tax dollars, but a cost of their time and effort. And so I truly do applaud them for volunteering their time and effort to try and get this off the ground. That is great. But I think it's also important that we understand that when these types of entities are formed, just as the one downtown was formed decades and decades ago, that it is actually funded by the property owners and business owners in the designated area, and that there really is no particular funding that comes from the general tax levy. So I just wanted to add that sort of explanation to it.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Worship. I apologize for the lack of video. I hope audio is okay. I just wanted to clarify that we did explain when we met with the business owners down there that there would be a levy if this was to result in a BIA being established. And also, I think we're getting to that point now as far as timelines are concerned where it makes sense. There was, because of COVID and because of construction, there weren't really enough businesses in the area for a while to warrant looking at this. But as the area continues to grow, as the fifth wheel property gets developed and we have more businesses going in there, it makes sense. I agree with Councillor DeVoli about the tax levy. I think that what it does, though, is it allows them to pool their resources, advertise as a group. It also gives them a voice, the same way that the DIA has a voice with council. For example, tonight the discussion with the farmers market was a DIA type discussion. And aside from giving them a voice and pooling their resources together, it gives them a destination kind of name in the same way that the downtown does. Now, we want to give them every opportunity to succeed, the businesses that are there, and I think this is just one step in that process. So I hope that we can all endorse this tonight. Thanks, Your Worship. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Corstangi.
Through you, Chair. I fully support this. I've gone down the last 2 weekends and talked to some of the business owners, and we definitely need more of a draw to get more people down there to experience the Grimsby by the Lake businesses. And I think if the merchants are willing to create this, I would be in full support.
Seeing no further questions or comments, moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Baradzi. Whereas the town of Grimsby recognizes the importance of supporting local businesses in the area known as Grimsby on the Lake and promoting economic development in the community, and whereas a business improvement area, BIA, is a proven method for supporting local businesses, improving the economic viability of a community, and enhancing the physical appearance and attractiveness of commercial areas. And whereas the town of Grimsby has not established a BIA for the area of Grimsby on the Lake, therefore be it resolved that staff of the town of Grimsby is directed to investigate the feasibility of creating a business improvement area for the area of Grimsby on the Lake, including all the businesses north of QE, east of the Winona border, and west of Kerman Avenue North. Be it further resolved that the investigation should include but not be limited to the boundaries of the proposed BIA, the potential benefits of a BIA for the businesses and the community, the costs and financial implications of establishing and maintaining a BIA, including any potential funding sources, the level of support from the businesses and property owners in the proposed BIA area, the potential services and programs that a BIA could offer to support local businesses and enhance the area's economic and physical vitality. Be it further resolved that staff report back to council with their findings and recommendations as soon as possible. Be it further resolved that upon receipt of the staff report, council will consider the recommendations and decide whether or not to proceed with the establishment of a business improvement area in Grimsby on the Lake. All in favor? That's carried. All right. We have a notice of motion. Introduction date is March 20th tonight. Subject procedure bylaw 2065, section 8.3, order of speaking. Requested by Councillor Baradzi. Notice. Whereas Grimsby's procedural bylaw, section 8.3, order of speaking states that a member can initially speak for 5 minutes with an optional extension of 5 minutes, and then a member wishing to speak a second time can speak for 3 minutes with an optional extension of 5 minutes. And whereas the procedure often allows discussion to go on longer than necessary, extends the length of our meetings, and whereas council meetings need to be run efficiently, therefore be it resolved that town staff prepare a report outlining options to amend procedural bylaw 2065, section 8.3, order of speaking. Further, the town consider the town of Lincoln's procedure of 712, question speaking order for speaking included below for information only. All right, now we move to report DPW 23-08, Ridge Road traffic considerations. Brandon?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually just going to turn it over to Michael Palumba, our traffic engineering technologist, who prepared this report.
Perfect. Good evening, Michael.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for having me this evening. So through you, I'm here to present the findings of the report that we have completed regarding traffic considerations along Ridge Road. This is coming in response to motion 22-180 with regards to regarding to concerns with traffic safety and requests for traffic calming in the area. Staff had a look through what was requested, but we've also reviewed some additional items, as this area has historically had a lot of concerns or inquiries regarding traffic and road safety. So we wanted to have a look kind of from border to border and look at some of the different areas of concern, even just outside of the ones that were identified within the motion. The main concerns in the area are obviously high travel speeds, Then we also can get into some sightline or geometric design concerns, mainly how the road is in terms of its curvature, condition, and so forth. Lack of sidewalks. There are some areas where we do have residential properties that are clustered, so there is a small number of people who do choose to walk on the road. And then one of the major ongoing issues is the presence of what people have called street racing or the use of exotic cars in the area. That issue I can speak to right away is one that is on the radar of the Niagara Regional Police, and we have dealt with over the years in order to try to cut down on those instances. After our review, we have a couple of points that we want to make with regards to the traffic calming request. We plugged this area into our traffic calming policy. From that, it was determined that traffic calming is not warranted in this area. The main reason for that is that it doesn't satisfy the policy, one of the policy's main criteria, which is the fact that Ridge Road is an arterial road and not a local collector or a local roadway. Typically, arterial roads are not considered for traffic calming due to the fact that they are, the purpose for them being an arterial road is to move traffic. So we're trying to, you want to try to avoid anything that's going to disrupt or delay the movement of goods, people and goods. Having said that, though, we did notice a few other things with regard to the geometric conditions in the area, mainly concerns with the curvature of the roadway and the sight lines. Ridge Road is a rural cross section with a 60-kilometer-per-hour speed limit, and the road does have a number of horizontal bends that kind of traverse through from east to west all the way through town. There are a few areas that we've noticed that I wouldn't say that they're problematic, but there is potential for there to be an issue there. So we've identified those as some spots that we want to take a closer look at. And then in addition, we want to provide, we were able to provide a little bit of background as to what we're doing in the area. We do a lot of data collection. Ridge Road is it's one of our main roads, so it's within our traffic calming, our traffic count, our annual traffic count program, which means that because it's a major road, it's counted more frequently than the rest, the rest of the roads in Grimsby, say a local road. A radar board, we do have radar boards that are deployed out in the areas. This is, again, because of the high priority of Ridge Road. The radar boards are put out there fairly frequently on a rotational basis. And there's multiple areas all the way from the border with Hamilton all the way to border with Lincoln. Collaboration with the Niagara Regional Police. So we do, as stated before, we do have frequent consultation with them, and specifically with the instances of high excessive speeders. So in the cases of street racing or exotic car usage, and again, we have a good relationship with them to be able to provide them with information about different times in the day where they can target their enforcement. So after we went through, when we looked at the different issues and concerns, we came away with 2 recommendations for you tonight. Basically, these recommendations are to carry out 2 items, both in 2023 and 2024. For 2023, even though the traffic calming is not recommended or it's not warranted along Ridge Road, we are requesting that that council allow staff to implement or to include Ridge Road as some spots along Ridge Road in our 2023 in-road flexible signage program, pilot program. As we had presented in the previous report regarding the continuation of our pilot, we are looking at some rural areas to implement this type of traffic calming. So Ridge Road was one of the areas that we would be considering. And then after 2023, moving into 2024, due to some of the ongoing concerns that we had identified, we're recommending that a road safety audit be completed for Ridge Road, and this would be a comprehensive road safety analysis that would be done by a qualified transportation consultant, which would then incorporate not only the one area of concern that was brought forward in the motion, but would look at the entire stretch of Ridge Road. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Michael. We have Councillor Shaw.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. Thank you, Michael. I got this one first, Reg. Look at that. So I actually grew up on Ridge Road West. I lived there for 20 years, so I'm very familiar with the speed. So you said that it's 60 kilometers a mile, or sorry, 60 kilometers an hour. I would say it's very, very prevalent speeding, like at least 80 kilometers an hour. As soon as people see a stretch, they just boot it. And there was a fatality across the street where somebody was driving at an excessive speed and lost control, started, maneuvering the steering wheel and smashed into a tree and actually died, unfortunately. So my concern with the flexible signs is that when you're traveling at such a high speed and then all of a sudden you're kind of forced to move the steering wheel, that's when people can lose control. Was that a consideration at all? Because that's the fear, is that it's not quite the same as if you're driving, in Grimsby where you're 40 kilometers an hour. These are, 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers is not something you wouldn't see up there either.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it definitely is a consideration, and we haven't completely we haven't completed our full review of our second year of that pilot yet. So when we go through that process, we identify a bunch of locations that we would that would potentially be good for this, and then we would also look at how we would implement those. As you said, this Ridge Road there are a whole bunch of different sections with a bunch of different characteristics. So we wouldn't be looking necessarily to incorporate this along the entire stretch, because there are some stretches where there are very few properties and access, and there are long straightaways where the travel speeds are going to be a lot higher. We're looking more so to incorporate. We'd be looking to incorporate these into areas where we have some density of residential units, where we can control the amount of calming that we put in and how we implement it, so that way it would deter vehicles from being able to get up to speed before they enter these types of areas. So it's definitely on our, it's definitely something we look at, and it's something that once we go through the process, we'll be able to come up with a plan to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Frake, then Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Totally agree with Councillor Shara. Half of Park, or of Ridge Road between Park and Mountain, is in Ward 1. And myself and my colleague over here is looking at me, and she knows what I'm going to say. It's a long road. It's a very dangerous road. It's a curvy road. It's very narrow. And I can tell you that I'm glad you're doing. I'm really happy you're doing this. You're doing this study, but I think you need to add something to it. I live below the escarpment, and I can hear the loud noise vehicles, like motorcycles and souped-up cars driving along Ridge Road. That's how bad they are. So I can just imagine what it's like if you're living on Ridge Road. I mean, that's not what I wanted to exactly talk about because you've got that covered in here. But my concern is Park Road and Ridge, there's a crossroads. You know what I'm talking about, right at the top of the hill. There's a three-way stop sign. But if you're going south on Park, it's very dangerous because, you know, if you, for people who are coming the other way on the other directions, and they think it's a right-of-way, they can just drive through, especially Park, you're going to have, I'm surprised there aren't more collisions. Maybe there are. I don't know if there are collisions there or not, but I mean, I'm sure it's an accident waiting to happen because there's no stop sign at Park and Ridge. So I think that's an extremely dangerous intersection. And the same thing is true on the other side at Ridge and Mountain. That's a three-way stop as well, and a two-way stop, and there's a right-of-way straight through. So they're very dangerous because I think there should be stop signs in each of the roads going four corners. Have you looked at that? I mean, or why haven't you looked at that? Is there no complaints about that area? I mean, it's very dangerous. I drive it all the time. I say once a day, I drive both those streets, and it's dangerous.
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Mayor, we have looked into these areas and these intersections, and we have received a few inquiries from residents. I wouldn't say it's been consistent. There are a number of reasons why the intersections are laid out the way they are. One of the main things to consider is that because how close the intersection is to the top of the hill, having vehicles coming up that steep of an incline and then having to stop right at the top, it can be problematic because there could be, if there's queuing, then you have queuing down a steep hill. But these types of concerns are the things that we are going to identify and review as part of the road safety audit.
I'll take that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Vardy.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I'm feeling is that what you're recommending is not going to address the concerns of residents. And you refer to a policy that it doesn't fit the warrants in the policy. Can you tell me about this policy? Is it our own policy? Is it a provincial policy? So what is the metric that we're using? That's the first question. And two, why can't we put some speed bumps in? It'll slow people down. So those are my two questions.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the policy that we're working on is a town, it's a town policy that we've had for a number of years and has been endorsed by council previously. The policy itself was developed based off of industry standards, so it's very much in line with what other municipalities are doing. And one of the first criteria that we have in it, and that is usually looked at when you're evaluating traffic calming, is the type of road itself. So as I said, because Ridge Road is an arterial road, typically arterial roads are not candidates for traffic calming due to the disruptions in the traffic movement that can occur. With Ridge Road, it is the only east-west continuous arterial road within the town that's actually under the jurisdiction of the town of Grimsby. As for speed humps, again, it's because of with speed humps. Speed humps are almost, I want to say, like almost a last resort, because they are such a significant they cause such a significant change in the characteristics of the road. yes, they do slow people down. However, in order to achieve a desired speed over a specific distance, you would need to install enough speed humps spaced at precise distances in order to achieve that. If the town was going to install a number of asphalt speed humps over a significant portion, it can become very costly. So that is one of the reasons why we would like to look at something like in the flexible signs as an alternative, not necessarily as a solution, but as an alternative specifically for rural roads, because we do get excessive speeding on rural roads, and due to items such as Ridge Road being an arterial or rural roads not having a significant number of volume, these are cost-effective ways that we can address high travel speed without having to put in, expensive and really invasive traffic calming devices.
Well, if you do use the bollards, like you've used below the escarpment, would we then ask residents if it's made a significant change in their concerns? And you say that Ridge Road's an arterial road. Are all east-west roads on the mountain arterial roads?
To you, Mr. Mayor. So for your first question, yes, we would complete the second year of the pilot in the same manner that we did the first year, where we would survey, we would collect data at different periods of time, and then we would also do public engagement with the residents in the area. In terms of arterial roads above the escarpment, not all east-west are arterial. It's that classification is identified within our official plan, and that classification has to do with the function of the road. Majority of the roads above the escarpment are just deemed as local roads because they're discontinuous and they're very low volume. Typically, arterial roads are your connections that are the main arteries through town that connect you to.
Ridge Road's not particularly high volume, though, is it?
It's through you, Mr. Mayor. It is the volume on Ridge Road. It varies because of how long it is, and so I believe we currently have, on average, somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 vehicles in some of the higher. 1,200 to 1,500 vehicles per day in some of the higher volume sections. But it's not always just the volume; it's the function, right?
I guess my concern, if I could just interject, sorry, Michael, if I could just interject.
Yeah.
My concern is it's a more residential rural road than any of the other rural roads on the mountain. And I think for that reason, arterial or not, I think we need to be looking at it as a little bit of a special case. Because we have a lot of residents who are concerned. And honestly, I really worry. While I respect what you do, I really worry that, we're not addressing residents' concerns and we're going to leave them wanting with what's being proposed. And I'm wondering if maybe we should have another look at our policy, because perhaps things have changed since it was last approved, and make it a little more friendly to residents. Because I really feel bad when we kind of sort of give a bureaucratic answer of, well, we looked at our policy and looked at the metrics and just doesn't fit. So too bad, and I'm left feeling bad for residents who feel like their concerns aren't being addressed. So I guess I don't know what more you can do, but if you can use that road with several of your bollards along various areas, I just want residents to see that we're making an effort in trying to address the problem. Thank you.
Councillor Corstangi.
Through you, Chair. Do we have concern with the flexible signage and the trucks being able to get through on the road?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that will depend on the location of where we install these. There is one section of Ridge Road that that is weight restricted all year round. So the occurrence of heavy vehicles is deterred and rerouted mostly to our to Mud Street. But having said that, when we implement these types of signs, we always look at what would be the minimum amount of space we can achieve without causing issues to larger vehicles and such as emergency services or trucks. So that it is a consideration.
Councillor Bradsey.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. My only concern with this, with majority of, or if not all of Ridge Road being unlit by street lights, is that perhaps someone speeding, say doing 80, coming down, could come across these flexible signage rather quickly. And then they could be, and in turn become a bigger hazard than a deterrent. Just wanted to hear your comments on that.
Sure. And through you, Mr. Mayor, so it is the visibility is a consideration when we're looking at potential locations. I want to reiterate that on a road such as Ridge, when we're searching for locations, we'd be looking at areas where we have a higher density of residential property. So in those ones there is some illumination. But the signs and bollards that we put out also do have retroreflectivity, and they have so they are reflective at night. It is a consideration, but at the same time too, these are very lightweight plastic signs, and if they are bumped or not, it would cause more damage to the sign than it would cause to say a vehicle.
All right, thank you for your presentation, Michael. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Sharwa. Resolved that report DPW 23-08 Ridge Road Traffic Considerations Report, March 20th, 2023, be received, and that Council approve the recommendations provided herein. All in favor? That's carried. Okay. All right. Now we move to Planning and Development Notice of Motion, moved by or brought in by Councillor Vardy. Timely planning information. Whereas Council requires complete, objective, and timely information on planning matters, including Ontario Land Tribunal appeals, to make fully informed and thorough decisions, and whereas to bring required planning applications before Council for a decision within the prescribed statutory timelines can and has resulted in OLT appeals for non-decision, and whereas upon the town having received OLT appeals, there has been instances of significant delay in notifying councils of these important legal matters. Therefore, be it resolved that upon the receipt of an initial development application, town staff are directed to notify relevant ward councillors of the application in a timely manner, and that in the event that a development application cannot be brought before council for a decision before the statutory Planning Act deadline, town staff are directed to notify council at the earliest opportunity prior to that deadline, and that upon the receipt of any OLT appeal, town staff are directed to provide council at its next regularly scheduled meeting a brief information report on the appeal, and further that the prospective non-decision events on complete planning applications and OLT appeals constitute potential or actual legal proceedings against the municipality, that these reports and information can be considered in closed session only. Now we move to correspondence. Municipal motion to deal with provincial sprawl plans. Is it there? Okay. I believe we're just receiving that, so we, yeah. Resolved. Yeah, we need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Frank, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the correspondence from Copernicus Educational Products be received. All in favor? That's carried. Our next Committee of the Whole meeting is scheduled for April 3rd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. This meeting is adjourned and will return to council meeting at 8:05. See you. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call a council meeting for Monday, March 20th, 2023 to order, first day of spring. Can everyone rise for the playing of the national anthem?
We see thee rise, the Juno strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, King of land, glorious and
Niagara region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendarong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we need a mover and seconder for approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Corstangi. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Corstangi. Resolved that the March 20th, 2023 council meeting agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to adoption of the previous minutes. Need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor Corstangi. Moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor Corstangi. Resolved that the special council minutes of March 2nd, 2023, committee of the whole minutes of March 6th, 2023, council minutes of March 6th, 2023, and special council minutes of March 8th, 2023 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to the consent agenda, or no, there's anything on the consent. Move to report DPW 23-03, parking restrictions, Governors, Redwood, McNabb, Nassau. Brandon, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I'm actually going to turn over to Michael Palumba again, and he's going to run through the presentation, and myself and Michael will be around to answer questions at the end.
Great, thank you, Brandon, and good evening again, Michael.
Oh, thank you. Thank you again. Sorry, just getting my bearings here. Am I sharing the report?
Yeah, if you don't, Katie or Bonnie, is Michael able to share a screen for the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, Michael can.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you again. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm here to present the report regarding parking restrictions along McNabb, Governors, Redwood, and Nassau. This is coming in response to Resolution 2311, where concerns were brought up with regards to on-street parking within the residential neighborhood south of Main Street, and the concerns being brought forward due to ongoing construction work at the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. The initial resolution had asked for parking restrictions be implemented within the entire neighborhood between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. in order to deter and eliminate any of the current conflicts with on-street parking and pedestrians.
Michael, sorry to interrupt. You're showing the notes page. Is there a way to flip between? Yeah, flip your screens, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Is that better?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so summary of the concerns that we've heard are there is the back to a high number of on-street parked vehicles, and that these vehicles are these vehicles are parking there as a result of ongoing works with the hospital. The issues that are occurring are congestion and narrowing on the roadways, so especially near intersections, and it's having residents are notifying the town that they're having a difficult time maneuvering through the neighborhood. In the map you're seeing here, this is a map of the area in question, and we've outlined the existing parking restrictions. So those are the ones you see in red. We've also identified through conversations with the hospital and the contractor some of the areas where parking for hospital staff and construction staff has been identified. These are areas such as the Centennial Church, the baseball diamond, on site at the hospital, and there is some leased space in the Orchard View Plaza. The specific areas of concern that were identified in motion are along McNabb, Redwood, and Nassau. The area on the east end of McNabb is particularly is one of the main areas of concern, as it's a small, very narrow section of road, and when there's vehicles parked on both sides of the street, it can be very difficult to maneuver. Staff have completed a number of site visits, so gone out there to try to verify some of the concerns that we've been hearing. So I've provided some of the site photos from some of the visits that were completed. As you can see, particularly in the bottom right corner, there is a photo of a town plow trying to maneuver its way through McNabb Drive with vehicles parked on both sides. Similar situation on the other end of Nassau, where the road itself is not a very wide platform, so having on-street parking is causing some residents concerns. Again, here is some more photos from Redwood Drive. And finally at Nassau. Nassau is the area just over by the church off of Kennedy, and there is has been reported a number of vehicles that are parking on the street, particularly close to the intersection, which is causing issues with cars maneuvering in and around the area. So the initial motion again was requesting to implement parking restrictions kind of broadly over the entire neighborhood, and that's the area in blue that you see here. Staff have reviewed that and have come up with a proposed parking restriction plan. So for your reference, that's the light blue line that you see in the area. This is basically removing parking on one side of the street and allowing parking on the other side. And it's specifically targeting those areas that are experiencing the most amount of, or the highest number of incidents with on-street parking. So what are our next steps? Next step here would be, in order to implement something on this scale, we would need to reach out to the residents and inform them of what the proposed restrictions are. We want to gather that feedback to ensure that they, one, know what's going on, and two, have the ability to voice their approval or concern, make any recommendations, provide any more insight. We've also, our bylaw enforcement department has also been working hard to deal with some of the issues, to deal with these issues as they have been coming up, particularly with instances where people are in violation of our existing bylaw policies. And then we also are going to have continued collaboration with the project team at the hospital. We have regular meetings with them, and they are aware of the situation and all of the concerns, and they've assured us through a number of conversations that they are working diligently to try to avoid causing any sort of issues with with their employees parking off site. So with that, I'll open it up now to questions.
Thank you, Michael. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Charwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. I'll just keep this really brief. I did drive around today just to kind of see the area, and I was very pleased that Linwood is you've taken care of that problem there. 2 cars on Brookside still tend to be there every time I drive by, but I'm not as concerned about that. McNabb was bad today. I see both parking on both sides, so definitely feel that needs to be addressed. West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, it looks like they are at capacity. Are they for their parking? Michael?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I'm going to defer this one to Brandon.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So what we found when we did the review is essentially, I was going to say, sorry, Michael, I was going to say, can you pull that map up again? But let me see if I'm just going to pull it up on my own screen.
Oh, do you want me to pull?
Yeah, just if it's not too much trouble. It's maybe slide 4, the one with that shows the parking conditions, if you don't mind. Perfect. That one will do. Okay, so essentially, when we did our review and talking to West Lincoln, basically they've said their peak period of staff is, I believe, around 140. And what they've done is they've accommodated 110 of those staff at the Centennial Park Church, and then the further 30 spaces on site at the West Lincoln Hospital. The remaining 60 spaces are for visitors. So they have indicated to us that they've accommodated their peak period of staff at both on-site and at the off-site location at Centennial Park Church.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. I'm sort of intimately familiar with the area because it is my neighborhood and I hear a lot from my neighbors. My concern, I've got various concerns in different points. I agree that the first foray into this was an overreach, and I appreciate your having told me so. But McNabb, that little piece of McNabb, it's about, maybe it's 100 meters max. I don't think there should be parking on either side. I think there's not enough room for, people to walk down there. It's regardless of which side you put the parking on, it's going to be hard for people to get out of their driveways. And when there's snow, the road becomes pretty much impassable. Now, we've given the consideration to Linwood Avenue. We've given, to have no on-street parking because of the hospital. We've done the same thing for, I can't remember the name of the street that runs parallel to Main Street. So no parking there. There is no parking on either side of Governor's up to McNabb. And I'm requesting that council give consideration, that we give the same consideration to those people living on that little piece of McNabb as we've done for Linwood and other streets surrounding the hospital. I have pictures which I could show you. It's just too intense. I mean, it's like a parking lot when you've got people on both sides. So like it's really inappropriate in my mind to have parking on either side of that street. With respect to the other streets, the issue on Redwood seems to have resolved itself. So my preference would be just to leave Redwood alone for now until it becomes an issue again. And the only other request I'd make is we do have a no parking between Main and Redwood on either side, and it goes up to Kennedy on one side. My request is to make it go as on Nellis as far as Kennedy as well. So it goes right up because it sort of misses that piece of Nellis. And what's happening is people are using that area to pull in and, let people out and park their cars, and it's causing damage to people's property. And people around here take care of their property. So my request for council to consider would be amending the recommendation to having no parking on that little piece of McNabb, no parking on either side, Monday to Friday. And then just increase that little bit on Nellis as far as Kennedy on both sides. I think Redwood seems to have resolved itself. So I'm thinking leave well enough alone if it's not a problem. If it becomes a problem later, we can address it. But I do think the people who live on that little piece of McNabb deserve the same consideration that the people on Linwood have. And if it pushes traffic further, that's fine. It won't be in such a confined space. And I hope council will consider my remarks in making their decision.
Councillor Korsanji.
Through you, Chair. My fear is we're just shifting around the parking, the excess parking from the hospital. My concern is we've moved it off Linwood, and if we move it off all these other areas, I see it now continuing to be a problem, and it's going to move to Brookside and to some other side streets. Is there a way that we can sort of look at this as a whole instead of just sort of shifting it all around?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. Good points, and I think that's kind of what our analysis has been, and trying to, as I think I've had discussions with various council members about looking at parking as a bit of a commodity, and what we're trying to do is establish areas where we think it's safe to park, and that is in conformance with their standards. The area of McNabb, which is the primary area of concern, is a 8.5 meter cross section. So it is designed to current engineering design standards. And that design allows it to accommodate one side of parking without interfering substantially with the traffic there. Michael, do you mind flipping to the map again and then going to the one where we're proposing the restrictions? Slide 11, I think. So what we're essentially trying to do here is see the blue line on McNabb. Essentially, is we're proposing to provide the restrictions on the south side of McNabb around the bend, as well as Governor's Road. So what we're essentially doing there is, we're seeing that there's cars parked there on McNabb on both sides of the road. Essentially, we feel that it's not safe to have two sides parking there. Essentially, we're saying we want you to park on the north side of the road on McNabb in that area. And as those cars disperse, we're providing them an opportunity to park on Governor's and around the bend on McNabb as a safe area for them to park. With respect to the full no parking daytime restrictions, I think Councillor Vardy is correct in her comments that we have entertained these type of arrangements in the past. I would say the downside of the full daytime restrictions in limited areas is essentially that does push the problem to another area. I think we saw that with the restrictions that we implemented following a petition last year. I think it was last year at the north end of Linwood. Immediately after we implemented the restrictions on Linwood, the cars moved over to Brookside Avenue. So essentially what we're saying here is what we want you to do is if you are going to park there, and we want you to park on the north side of McNabb, and we're going to make that a safe area for you to park.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. So Brandon, if we were to go ahead and approve this, and we said okay to one side, and Councillor Vardy heard that this isn't enough, how quickly could we go ahead and make it no parking on both sides? And is that possible?
It is possible. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. It is possible to do full restrictions on both sides. Again, it's not our recommendations. We feel that that road is designed to accommodate one side parking, and if we are looking at as parking as a commodity, then it's an acceptable use on that roadway. How quickly we could turn it around, I think the next steps, as we have talked about, is essentially we envision some type of notice to the residents saying, here's what we received some concerns. Here's how we're proposing to remedy those concerns. It would include a map showing where those parking restrictions would apply, and then give them an opportunity for some feedback, which we would then take back. If all the residents are up in arm and saying we want full restrictions, I think that would maybe change our viewpoint. But at this point right now, this is what we're recommending as I think a measured response to what we're seeing as concerns.
So like I said, when I did my little drive-through today, that one little tiny spot on McNabb was concerning for sure. There were 7 cars, 4 on the one side and 3 on the other, right? So you have to drive very slowly right in between. So a bigger vehicle, I'd be a little concerned that it's getting pretty tight there. And there were some other cars kind of around the bend as well. So yeah, so for me, it's just a matter of if this doesn't work, if we could go to something more substantial like Councillor Vardy is suggesting, then that would be my preference.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to add to that, I just wanted to say that we will obviously be monitoring the situation if we implement the changes that we're proposing. And again, there's another opportunity for this matter to come back to council after we do our notifications. We will have to bring a bylaw back which indicate the changes. So through our communications with the residents and additional considerations, we may tweak this, what we're proposing today, when we come back to council as well. So, and also just, again, if I didn't say it earlier, but we will monitor the situation and we will adapt if there's further issues caused by these changes.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Worship, through you. I have concerns about and it's been brought up before, is pushing the problem from one neighborhood to the next, if we're doing it for safety reasons, if we're limiting parking for safety reasons, or if we're limiting parking for snow removal and to make snow removal vehicles make it easier for them to get through, then I'm fine with it. If we're doing it because it's inconvenient for residents to have people parking on their street, then I have some concerns about it, because they are public streets. We know that there's limited parking at the hospital. The ability to park on a public street is, unless there's a danger to people, is kind of a accepted norm. So I would rather see, if we do go to one-sided parking, I would rather see the solution be, limited time parking, whether it's 1 hour or 2 hours, so that people aren't parked there for long periods of time. So like staff aren't parking there, for example, from the hospital. But especially in the short term, where we know that the hospital has very limited parking and people want to visit relatives and want to be able to go there, I think we're creating even more of a problem by restricting it. So I'm fine with one-sided, and I would also like, if Brandon or Michael feel like limiting the time on that one side to 1 hour or 2 hours, it makes sense, then I would like to see that happen too. Thanks, Your Worship.
Councillor Vardy.
Mr. Mayor, guys, thank you. Sorry, I can't tell if you can see my hand or not. I appreciate that you're going to go to the residents first, and that'll be very, very informative. And, I'm willing to support this as an interim measure, providing that if it's still problematic, that we can address it. I would like you to consider, as Councillor DeFlavio says, limited parking times, like 3 hours, so that if it's for people visiting people in the hospital, that's fine. But we do know that the hospital has provided enough space for staff to park. There's the parking at the church and the shuttle bus that's run, so staff can be accommodated. So if it's visitors, then 3 hours parking is more than enough time. So it gives people an opportunity to come and park on the one side. So I would like that to be part of the considerations when you reach out to people. The other thing is, I would really like you to consider that piece of Nellis between Redwood and Kennedy, because that's an issue where people are parking on somebody's lawn. And yeah. And I guess I just want to reiterate for people that who don't know the area, there are no sidewalks in this area. So people are forced to walk on the street. And I don't think people are wanting sidewalks. They just want safe streets. So and my concern about wanting no parking on both sides, sometimes it's very hard, if you have a row of cars, it's very hard to get out of your driveway and kind of maneuver around if there's already a car on the road. So, and given snow blocking both sides, I know Brandon says 8.5 meters, but you can probably take 2 meters off that when we've got, snow banks on either side. So I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just add to your comments to both Councillor Vardy and Councillor DeFlavio. So I heard both of your input, and I with respect to the extending the parking on Nels between Kennedy and Redwood, and that is a takeaway that I'll review with the team, as well as looking at potential for limited times. Again, that's a takeaway that I can review with Michael and include as part of our considerations when we come back to the council.
Seeing no further questions or comments, thank you, Michael and Brandon. Moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that report DPW 23-03 parking restrictions, Governor's Road, Redwood Drive, McNabb Drive, and Nassau Drive amended, dated March 20th, 2023, be received, and that Council consider the information presented in this report, including the changes to parking restrictions being proposed by staff, and that staff notified the impacted residents of the changes prior to their implementation and bring the appropriate bylaw amendment to Council for their approval after the residents have been notified. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Brandon and Michael. Have a good evening. All right, now we move to report PA 2311, Heritage Property Recommendation Report. Hi, Bianca.
Good evening, Council, through the Mayor. I'm just going to quickly share my screen so you can see the subject site. Okay, so I'll be giving a brief presentation regarding the requested demolition permit for the property at 487 Main Street West. So on February 2nd, 2023, a demolition permit was submitted for the property. And I wanted to note, moving forward, the February 2nd date is the formal date the provisions under the Heritage Act commenced. So once a demolition permit for a building listed on the register is applied for, staff have 60 days to provide a recommendation to council and provide the applicant with a decision. It is important to note that the last Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee meeting took place on February 2nd, and due to the submission of the demolition permit being on the date of the meeting, this was prioritized at the March Heritage Committee meeting. However, in order to meet the 60-day statutory timelines outlined within the Act, we needed to provide an opportunity for the Heritage Committee to provide comment. Staff streamlined the approval process by bringing this directly to Council tonight, rather than waiting for the Committee of the Whole decision to be ratified on April 3rd. This will enable the municipality to meet the statutory timelines mandated by the Heritage Act. So following an extensive and exhaustive review in consultation with the Grimsby Historical Society for the property at 487 Main Street West, the results concluded that the property does not meet any of the criteria as prescribed by the ministry through Ontario Regulation 56922, and therefore does not merit long-term protection under Part 4, also known as designation. And it is important to note that no contextual or associative value was identified on the subject site. So in accordance with the Act, following receipt of a demolition permit, the Council of the municipality must firstly identify if the resource has cultural heritage value, and then following that assessment, Council must determine firstly if the property should be designated if value is found, and if not, then then it would be removed from the municipal heritage register and the demolition of the structure would be permitted. So following the exhaustive assessment, it is being recommended by staff and endorsed by the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee that the property at 487 Main Street West be removed from the municipal heritage register and that the demolition request be permitted. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bianca. Questions or comments from council? Seeing none, Councillor DeFlavio.
Thanks, Your Worship. Sorry. I just wanted to point out, we did bring forward a resolution at a previous heritage meeting regarding the value of heritage registers and asking the provincial government to look at the change in the policies regarding heritage registers. I pointed out at the heritage meeting, and I want to reiterate that this is an example of how the heritage register works successfully. We have homes that were placed on the register because they from externally appeared to have been of heritage value. Upon assessment, they were not, and therefore would not be designated, but it gave us the opportunity to look at this home, say, does it meet the criteria that the province has set out for designation? No, it does not. Therefore, we can allow the demolition to occur. It's an example of how the system works, the old system works, and why it should be continued. And I think we need to continue to push our provincial representatives to allow them to understand that the Heritage Register is not just a means of putting a blanket over a municipality and hindering change. It's a way of assessing heritage and acknowledging when something is of heritage value, and also acknowledging when something is not. And this is one of those cases where we're acknowledging that it's not one that needs to be designated or protected, and it shows that the system works. So I hope that the province will continue to look at that policy and make the changes necessary to keep this system working. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comment, moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Corsangi, resolved that report PA 23-11, Heritage Property Recommendation Report 487 Main Street West, demolition request be received, and the dwelling at 487 Main Street West be permitted for demolition as the resource does not meet two or more of the Ontario Regulation 569/22 criteria for designation under the Ontario Heritage Act, and the property be removed from the Municipal Heritage Register under Section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act as a property that council believes to be of cultural heritage significance. All in favor? That's carried. All right, and now we're moving to the minutes that were moved. So what we need to do, or to move from committee of the whole to council, so we need to first waive the rules of procedure. So we need a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor DeVoldy, second by Councillor Sharwa. Moved by Councillor DeVoldy, second by Councillor Sharwa. Resolved that council waive the rules of procedure to address item GH 23-05 Municipal Heritage Register Porch Demolition Alteration Request, 18 Murray Street, from the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee minutes of March 14th, 2023 at council. Yes, this requires a 2/3 majority to waive procedure. So we'll do a recorded vote.
Through Mr. Mayor. Councillor DeVoldy.
Yes.
Councillor Frake.
Yes.
Councillor Howe.
Yes.
Councillor Vardy.
Yes.
Councillor Sharwa.
Yes.
Councillor Costangi.
Yes.
Councillor Bradzi.
Yes.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, now moved by, or actually, Councillor Corsangi, did you want to speak on the porch again, or?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So there was a request from the Heritage homeowners on 18 Murray Street for demolition of the existing porch, which is suffering from a lot of rot and other things. And they're making a new porch that's very similar. It's going to fall in line with the Heritage home, and it's a little bit bigger for them. It's going to be a nice addition. The Heritage Committee endorsed it, and it was the idea of expediting it, which I thank my colleagues for, came from one of the Heritage Committee members for the benefit of the Heritage homeowner so that they could get started on it to protect the home from the rot from the porch and because of the time of year, so there wasn't an unnecessary delay. So we want to show good faith with our Heritage homeowners that we're willing to work with them and build a good relationship.
Thank you. Any further questions? Moved by Councillor Corsangi, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that report 18 Murray Street Municipal Heritage Register porch demolition alteration request dated March 14th, 2023 be received, and the demolition alteration request for the porch at 18 Murray Street be recommended for approval, and that the porch on 18 Murray Street be photo documented and that copies of the photos be provided to the Grimsby Historical Society for their archives, and that the viable material from the porch be salvaged and are offered to salvage companies to avoid high-quality materials going to the landfill. Recorded vote, all in favor? Or, sorry, recorded vote?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor DeVoley.
Yes.
Councillor Frake.
Yes.
Councillor Howe.
Yes.
Councillor Vardy.
Yes.
Councillor Charrois.
Yes.
Councillor Corstangi.
Yes.
Councillor Bradzi.
Yes.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Yes.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
All right, now we move to correspondence. Councillor Charrois, you'd want to speak to the correspondence?
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor Jordan. So, I had thought about this last time. I had noticed this error in the wording. When we had gone through the process of just editing, I had made a suggestion that for fire, that it was optimized delivery of fire protection, so my suggestion was optimized delivery of fire protection and fire prevention services. And it was noted that it was going to be updated, and that was approved. And then on the document that we have, it says optimized delivery and fire protection and fire protection services. So there's no mention of fire prevention, which needs to be included. So I don't know whether we need to change the document, because when I had looked it up, it says that in the Fire Prevention and Fire Protection Act, it defines fire protection services as including fire suppression, fire prevention, and fire safety. So it does cover that. I just want to point out to everybody, if we are leaving it this way, that there is an obligation to the municipality to follow the Fire Prevention and Fire Protection Act. And the responsibilities defined say that every municipality shall establish a program in the municipality which must include public education with respect to fire safety and certain components of fire prevention, and B, provide such other fire protection services as it determines may be necessary in accordance with its needs and circumstances. So again, we don't have to change it, but I just want to clarify that fire prevention is an absolutely necessary component of that strategy, and so fire prevention falls under that fire protection.
CAO?
Sorry, just to clarify, I think that was a typo. It should be fire protection and fire prevention and fire protection services. So we'll change the first fire protection to fire prevention.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so that's been noted. We have Councillor Charrois as the mover. Just need a seconder now. Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Charrois, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the memorandum regarding revisions to the 23 to 26 strategic priorities document be received, and that the final 2023 to 2026 strategic priorities document be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to Regional Councillor Seaborn. Your update for tonight. Good to see you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Through you and to the members of council, thank you for allowing me to come and try and get through transit. It's certainly been 2 weeks worth of information for me, so I hope I can clarify it. I know the last time I came to see you, there were a lot of questions about it, so I'm hoping that between the report and any questions that you have, we can clear through it. So my first indication there was a problem was when I got a phone call asking me when the buses were coming to Grimsby. The buses are not coming to Grimsby. Not this year, not next year, probably not for several years. Buses, I will suggest, are a 35-foot vehicle that makes regular stops every 400 meters along the designated route. Before 2023, the region of Niagara participated in an intermunicipal regional transit program that had 9 different categories. 9 different categories, 9 different groups of people participating, and it was not considered to be a very fluent method of getting people moved. In 2020, right at the heart of the pandemic, they all got together and decided to collaborate and see how could they make this into one system that would work. So they worked out a lot of the bugs. They put together a program whereby municipalities that had buses would still run buses. Communities that had community buses, which are your small ones like Niagara on the Lake, they would still have those. But they would bring into effect an on-demand system for the smaller communities like Grimsby and Pelham and Lincoln and what have you, that still needed to get people to move around, but a big bus was not something that was going to work for us. So working collaboratively, they came up with a system and they ran it for a while and decided that this was the system they were going to work with. They needed, however, to just bring it more into a nice, neater bundle. So what they did there is they decided they were going to change everything from all these 9 little businesses that were running collaboratively but loosely, and they were going to create the Niagara Regional Transit. So in January 2023, Niagara Regional Transit took over for the region transportation for Niagara. So what this meant was that all cities throughout Niagara now had a transit system. They would all work with a schedule that was conducive to each other. So buses in the 3 areas that had buses, which of course are St. Catharines, Welland, and Niagara Falls, their bus schedule would be a specific schedule. All cities and towns without those buses now had a local transit system that would get people from one area to another. So the new service set out a set of hours that they run, and they would have a system whereby you could get anywhere in Niagara. So for example, if you're in Grimsby and you want to go shopping in Grimsby, you can call the NRT on demand. You can book it online through their app, or you can call in the service. It's a ride-share program, and I think that is something that some people don't realize, is you may have other people in the vehicle when you're picked up. So the ride share will take you to your destination. The cost is $3, provided you stay in your municipality. But I want to go from Grimsby and I want to go to St. Catharines. So I would tell my driver that I want to go to St. Catharines, and my fee now is $6. So as soon as you've crossed one municipality, the fee goes up to $6. But now I want to go to Fort Erie. So how much is it going to cost me to go from Grimsby to Fort Erie? It's still $6. So you don't get charged for every municipality that you cross. You get charged the once. So it's actually not a very bad deal. The larger centers will still continue with a bus. So now I want to go to Niagara College and I want to do the Welland campus. So how am I going to get there? I'm going to take the on-demand system and I'm going to take it right through to Welland. I'm going to ask for a transfer. They'll let me off at the Seaway Mall. I'm going to hop one of the buses for the campus, or one of the city buses rather, and I get taken there. That whole trip cost me $6. So it's a good service, and it's there, and it is working. I'm not going to say flawlessly. We'll touch that one in a second. The other misconception is transit will always pay for itself. The reality is transit will never pay for itself. Transit is always going to have a cost. In the past, we haven't really seen the cost as a taxpayer because it's been absorbed in the regional budget, part of it which goes towards your police services, your community health, and that section that you don't really see. So that's your agencies, your boards and your other commissions. And that's always been part of your regional taxes. That's now been moved off there, and it's now going to come as a separate levy. And now all of a sudden, there's the concern about there's another tax coming through. So the levy amount used to be $1.2 million. That was each municipality's share of the cost of providing transit for Niagara. Each municipality had a charge. For Grimsby, as I said, it was $1.27 million. Then there's the portion of what we're actually using. So for Grimsby, it has been determined that $407,000 is our share of the cost of running the on-demand program. So the user is going to pay $3. The municipality is going to pay for the true cost of the transit. That works out to $1.68 million for the town of Grimsby. So I'm constantly telling you this is what it is for Grimsby because every municipality is different. If I have a bus service, my levy is going to be a whole lot bigger than if I don't have a bus service. There are two communities that aren't participating. So West Lincoln and Waynfleet both have very small populations. They have a large area to cover. They have chosen not to participate. However, if I live in Smithville and I want to come to Grimsby, I can call the on-demand and get the ride. I just can't go from Smithville to Smithville. The actual figure or the amount of money per household on this will work out to $124 a year. So it's the full $1.68 million divided by the number of households in Grimsby, and that's what you're going to see as the levy amount of your transit for 2023. I hate being the bearer of this news. With that, I'll leave it open for questions, and I think everybody did receive the copy of my report. It was kind of tricky to figure out who pays what and what, so if I can answer or make anything else clear, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Councillor Seaborn. Questions, comments? Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Seaborn. You actually answered the one question I had because I was calling around on the weekend to test NRT, and I did call because I knew Waynfleet and West Lincoln opted out, and you could get service, which I was surprised because that's a pretty good deal since they're only paying like $400,000 or something. But yes, they have that. So first question is, is there something now with NRT where they're contracting out like Uber type drivers? Because I could have sworn I saw somebody in an SUV with an NRT on like a removable kind of thing on one of the doors.
I don't think so. There are 14 designated vehicles for the West Lincoln or the West Niagara area. West Niagara in this case is Lincoln, Pelham, Waynfleet, Grimsby, and Lincoln itself. So the 5 of them make up that area. There's 14 vehicles that take care of it. They run the service from 7 a.m. till 10. There shouldn't be any vehicles that are on the road that claim to be NRT if they're not the actual vehicles.
Okay. So a few just comments. So I called NRT on the weekend because I wanted to see what kind of service I'd get. I was pleasantly surprised that my customer service agent was helpful, so I will give that positive feedback. However, it was Saturday or Sunday I had called requesting how I would go about getting service to St. Catharines. So I had said if I were going to the Penn Center, what would I do? I book online, and then I would get dropped off. I would get picked up. I would get dropped off at the bus station, and then I would have to transfer at the bus station to wherever my location was, and then I would have to get some transfer pass of some sort. Unfortunately, there's no agent online to speak with because the transit office is closed on the weekend. So it's not only confusing, it was also inaccessible, there's nobody to talk to. So that's an issue I think they need addressed for sure. And same for Niagara Falls. So everything, basically, you get dropped off in St. Catharines, and you hope that you can figure out a way to get to your second location, which I don't love. I think in Grimsby, I'm hoping that service within Grimsby is what people are using, and that's maybe where we're getting more bang for our buck, but outside of here, it's not looking good. Do we have any statistics as far as whether most of the transit is happening within Grimsby or the percentages going outside? That'd be helpful.
I could tell you that Grimsby is the biggest user of the on-demand system. The first 6 months, there was 12,000 rides. It's pretty good for a brand-new system. I don't know how many are going outside of the community. I know one of the issues that was brought up during the conversation here was, what if I want to go the other way? So what if I want to go to Hamilton? We have a new hospital that's coming. It's going to be populated by doctors that will likely have offices, not just in St. Catharines, but they're going to have them in Hamilton and Stony Creek as well. How are we going to get people across that imaginary line? Now, apparently there were problems with it before because of insurance policies and concerns there. But now that it's no longer a part of the region and it's a standalone organization, they are working on the insurance that will allow our vehicles to go across. Now, the only one that does right now is DARTS. So we have a special transit bus for people that have mobility issues, and they will take you to a drop-off location in Winona, and you can go from DART. So that's the only way going west. But you're absolutely right, and you've hit a lot of things on the nose there, because I said that there were problems. And I have had more people with concerns and problems than I have with compliments for it. And they recognize the fact that there's bugs in the system, and they're working on it. And I think what you mentioned there about not knowing where to go once you've gotten into the system, your best bet is to do it online. Online will give you a lot more information, and it will tell you where your drop-off zones are. And if you do have to take a bus, it does explain where the buses are. Other than that, it should be a station-to-station service once you get out of your own community. But as far as how many people in Grimsby are using it to go outside, I don't know that answer, but I will find out for you if you'd like.
Thank you, yes. So back in July of 2021, I had asked for, through NRT, for the stats for all of the ridership for July 2021. Didn't get it at the time. I was told I was going to get it, never got it. I requested it a few weeks back, and I was told, sorry, everything's being transferred to the new commission. They're not going to give me that information. So I would really appreciate if we could get, even for February of 2023, or just some statistics of all the ridership for 1 month, so that we could see where we're going and how people are using it, so that we can use them effectively. So thank you.
So you'd like to know total ridership and where they're going?
Total ridership for 1 month. Recently would be fabulous, and yes, so we can know when the busy times are, where people are riding, and so just so that we can make those changes and make sure that people are actually using it, because we are investing a lot of money in it. Thank you.
Councillor Corstange.
Through you, Chair. So I'm not going to repeat what I said last time, but so I think that it's a much needed transit opportunity in Grimsby, and anybody who grew up here knows that. I do believe that it can be more efficient. And some of the feedback I've had is the hours are, you can't be relied on if you have employment that goes to 10 or past 10 on getting a ride home, and that's an issue, and that can be an employment barrier for people who do not drive. That's some of the feedback I've had. The reliability and the time frame of when it can come, and it canceling quite often. And I mean, if you, for instance, I used it once and it was like a 20-minute pickup, which is fine. I booked it 20 minutes before because it's a ride share. It drove around for another half an hour and then dropped off at location. So, you know, an hour to get to a location that's maybe 3 kilometers from my house was not really ideal. what I would like to see is public consultation. We need the feedback from the public who have these experiences, then we can develop a more efficient model. I think this is great that we're opening the conversation for us and what we've heard, but I think there's a lot of people in the public that have tried it and haven't used it or are really identifying some concrete barriers that can be fixed. I'd like to see that. I do see taxis in town, and if we are paying, as much as we are, $125 per household, we shouldn't have to have taxis coming into town as a more efficient service when essentially that person's already paying for that service. So public consultation is something that I would highly recommend.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much, Councillor Seaborn. All right, bylaw. That's all right. All right, we need a mover and seconder for first reading of bylaw. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Corsangi, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-24 and that same be read a first time. All in favor? It's carried. Need a mover and seconder for second and third reading. Councillor Devoli, Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Devoli, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-24 read a first time, be now read a second and third time, and finally passed, and that mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same and rule council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we need a mover and seconder to go into closed. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that council meet in closed session under section 2392E Municipal Act, where a closed meeting is held if the subject matter is being considered is litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. All in favor to go into closed? And that's carried. We're now going into closed. All right, welcome back. We're back in open session now. Need a mover and seconder for the information provided in closed session. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Charwa. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Charwa. Resolved that the direction provided in closed session be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, just before we read bylaws, I realized that I did miss a section before we went into closed. First, are there any announcements? Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I just wanted to note that the Peach Kings are on their playoff journey in round 2. Starts on Thursday. First game's at home is on Friday. And hope to see a lot of people out there.
Councillor DeVoli.
And while we're thinking about being green, just to remind everybody that this coming Saturday is Earth Day, and from 8:30 to 9:30, you are more than welcome to turn off all unnecessary lights and energy consumption and to help our Earth go dark for an hour.
Seeing no further announcements, next council meeting is scheduled for April 3rd, 2023, immediately following Committee of the Whole. Need a mover and seconder for first reading of the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-25 and that same be read a first time. All in favor? And that's carried. Mover and seconder for second and third reading. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Charwa. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Charwa. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-25 read a first time, now be read a second and third time. Finally passed, and the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same, and roll council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night.